Chinchano. How are you guys doing? It's a pleasure to be here performing for you at Rootabaga Jazz Festival. Let's give it up for Dustin Lorenzi, the tenor saxophone. We have Steve Needman on the piano. Matt Gillery on the bass. We started the set with a composition that is going to be in our newest CD. It should be coming out this fall. But we're going to continue that composition by actually our pianist. This one is called Tres Chuyos. All right. That was a wine note written by El Príncipe del Wino, Stu Mindeman. Sorry, I'm having a lot of fun to be here. Just I want to let you know how much love we have felt since the moment that we arrived to your town. So I just want to show you my appreciation. Right before the concert started, I was just looking at my musicians and I was like, man, I'm a little touched. Like it has felt really good to be here. Before I forget, I want to give a shout out to the Craft place, the restaurant where we started. I don't think Chris is here, but the picture of us, like nobody else. It was amazing. It was really good. We ate lots of steaks. It was great. We're gonna continue with a composition. This one is gonna be also in your album that should be coming this fall. This one is it's called Memorias, which means memories. And it was a little bit of a reflection of a certain time of my life where I felt like there was a lot of things that I learned after like the passing of my dad and understanding that memories and that life, the present, it was so important to me. And I just wrote this song kind of with that idea in mind. So this one is Memorias. me again. Are you guys feeling good? I'm having a moment. I'm having a good time here. There are programs, so I'm sure you have read parts of it, but I'd like to share a little bit of this band. This band is being pretty much a necessity for me because there's a time period where I'm originally from Lima, Peru, but I've been in the United States, in the Chicago area for now a while, and I feel like I'm in the community. I feel like I'm part of Chicago. It took me a while to feel that, and something that I felt during the process of feeling that I belong somewhere was the idea that I didn't belong anywhere. Like I felt like every time I go home, people would joke with me being like, because once in a while I'll say something in English, and they'll be like, "You're a gringo," and and every time I will be in the States when I go to wanted to play some jazz with my friends, not meant intention, but sometimes I'll get into a session and be like, "Hey, you want to play a Latin song?" And I was like, "I just want to play a blues," or "I want to play." So Chinchano is being that process of adaptation, understanding cultures the best that I can by living with the people that are in the culture, are actively creating within that culture. So I just wanted to share a little bit of kind of what we're doing. If this is the first time that maybe you're listening to us, Chinchano is that process of Juan moving to the States and finding some cool people to share music with, and then finding the right people to create something that truly, I believe at this point that we are creating that fusion, and I am proud of it. I say that as humble as I can because it took a while for me to understand how precious this band is to me. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to Andy for bringing us here. We do have another set. Yeah, let's give it up for Andy. So we're going to continue playing some music. This one is, the name of the song is called Carlitos, which is the name of my dad, who passed away a few years now. He was the inspiration of many things, and he was the inspiration for that album that is called Cachito, which we actually have it, I believe, at the merch table, if you're interested in listening more of us. So we're going to continue with that track called Carlitos. You guys like that one? It's a serious question. It's the first time actually we performed it. That song was written not that long ago, and we rehearsed it. When was it? Like 2 days? 2 days ago? And we rehearsed it 2 days ago, and I'm always happy. I was just talking to Dustin earlier today about like sometimes when you're writing, and I personally, just because I've been playing with these guys for a little while, I always get excited about what are they going to do with the information that I give them. And sometimes not on purpose, sometimes I'm vague because I don't know seriously what I want. Sometimes I like, yeah, I don't want to tell you too much too. I learned that from man. So that was El Rio. I think we have a couple more songs. I'm not 100% sure for this set, but we have another full set of music coming up later. Stick around. I believe that there's a night period of a lot of music. Thank you to the festival, Andy, and everybody who's participating today. So this next one is called En Otro Tal Vez. All right, thank you so much for sticking around with us. We're going to continue with one last song for this set, but don't go anywhere. There's a lot of music coming up. This next one is called Que Frio, and it's also going to be in our latest album. If you're interested in some of the music that you've been listening tonight, we do have 4 records for sale today. CDs, if you still have those. But if you're hip, you have vinyls, and we also have those. So please help us out, buy a record. You know, we'll pay for our gas card. No, I mean, I'm just joking. They are really taking care of us here. So, but you can always buy a record. This one is called Que Frio. It means Que Frio. What means how cold. And I wrote it on my basement. That kind of season where it's cold enough outside, but not too cold where the heat keeps going, so the basement feels extra cold. And that's just what was happening. Que frio. One, two, three, four.